Most people only change when they reach their limit, when they can't take it anymore. However, the true wear and tear almost never comes from a big blow. It comes from things that are not noticeable to the naked eye, from silent habits that accumulate day after day, from repetitive thoughts that exhaust you like a constant background noise that never turns off, from relationships that seemed harmless and are now eating away at the foundations of your emotional health. Have you ever wondered how many physical symptoms could be the result of that invisible wear and tear, like insomnia, constant exhaustion, muscle knots that won't go away, or anxiety with no apparent cause? Sometimes you aren't sick, you're just saturated, not by what you do, but by what you endure without realizing it. But now it's different. Now is the time to make a profound decision, to cut it out from the root. You don't have to explain yourself or justify yourself, or wait for others to understand what you're feeling. There are changes that make no noise but mark a before and after. True strength is not demonstrated by shouting. It's built in silence. It is affirmed in that inner firmness that is born when you stop negotiating with what is harming you, when you understand that protecting your peace is no longer an option but a priority. This video is an invitation to let go of what drains you, to make space for what strengthens you. You're not here by chance. You're here because at some point you had a feeling that something had to change. And that change is not born of pride, but of deep respect for yourself, for your well-being, for your energy, for that new chapter that, even if you don't see it yet, has already begun to be written within you. Let's start with something essential. If there is one transformation that truly changes the direction of your life, it is learning to manage what happens inside your mind. Now we are going to talk about something as invisible as it is powerful, the thoughts that sabotage you. They don't make noise. They don't knock on the door. They just enter, settle in, and mess everything up as if they own the place. The most disconcerting thing is that many times we are the ones who open the door to them. We even give them the key without realizing it, without stopping to question whether they have the right to be there or if they are just occupying a space that no longer belongs to them. But what if today you decided to close that door definitively? What if you stopped giving space to thoughts that don't take care of you, that don't build you up? What if you began to choose with more awareness what kind of dialogue you allow within yourself? You don't have to continue being a prisoner of those ideas that wear you down. You can regain control, not with one blow, but with a clear decision. Stop feeding what weakens you and start cultivating what strengthens you from within. Those thoughts are like old paths. You have walked on them so many times that you no longer even notice that you are returning to the same place. Guilt, comparison, insecurity. What is repeated too much ends up becoming a belief. How many times have you heard that voice in your mind telling you that you're not enough, that you're going to fail again, that something bad is about to happen, even if there are no real signs? And as those phrases are repeated, anxiety sets in. You start living in alert mode, with a tight chest, with fear of making a mistake, of disappointing, of not being up to par. Not because of what is happening outside, but because of what is being repeated inside. When that internal noise is not questioned, it ends up directing your life, and little by little what you think becomes what you feel, and what you feel becomes what you believe you are. You don't have to follow every thought that appears in your mind. Just because it's there doesn't mean it's true, or that it deserves your attention. You can choose other ideas that are fairer, healthier, and more consistent with the person you want to become. Louise Hay used to say that every thought is an affirmation, and that every affirmation you repeat shapes your inner reality. That's why change doesn't start outside, in circumstances or in others. It begins inside your head. It's not about fighting with the old, but about feeding the new. Consciously choose which thoughts deserve space and which ones it's time to let go of. Now we are going to talk about something very important, concrete tools to stop being a prisoner of the thoughts that sabotage you. Question what you think. Not everything your mind says is true. Not everything that appears deserves your attention. Ask yourself honestly, does this thought help me? Is it healthy for my life? Does it connect me with what I want, or does it push me away from myself? Just by asking these questions, you begin to weaken the mental noise. Because when you observe your thoughts instead of obeying them, you regain something you had forgotten: your power to choose. The next tool is fundamental. Break the pattern with a firm and conscious voice. When a self-sabotaging idea appears, don't keep quiet, don't ignore it. Respond to it with determination. You can say to yourself, "This doesn't help me and I'm not going to keep thinking like this. Today I choose to take care of myself." It's not just a phrase, it's an act of presence. It's setting a clear limit to what you no longer want. And when your mind begins to listen to you speak to it with respect, it also begins to change the way it thinks. This simple phrase breaks the automatic cycle of negativity, and when you decide what you are going to feed, your mind begins to follow you, not the other way around. The third tool is to intentionally change your focus. Your mind cannot be in two places at the same time. If you choose to focus on what nourishes you, on what you have, on what moves you, on what is working, the negative things begin to lose strength on their own. The thoughts that harm you don't disappear because you push them away. They disappear when you stop feeding them. And every time you choose to put your attention on something that is good for you, you are training your mind in favor of your well-being. In the end, understand this with total clarity. You don't need to fight against negative thoughts. It's not about fighting with your mind or forcing a calm that you don't feel. It's about something much deeper. Learn not to obey what doesn't represent you, what doesn't nourish you, what isn't born of self-love. Louise Hay said that you aren't against yourself. You have only learned mental patterns that no longer serve you. And if you learn them, you can also unlearn them. Not every thought that comes along deserves your obedience. You can observe it, let it pass, and choose a new one that takes care of you, that respects you, that reminds you that you deserve to feel at peace. Overcoming negative thoughts isn't about winning an internal war, but about learning to change the language you use to talk to yourself. Be firm without hurting yourself. Be mindful without punishing yourself. Be the owner of your mind without becoming your own executioner. Now let's get into something essential, the way you treat yourself, because many times it's not what happens outside that wears you down the most. It's that internal voice that doesn't forgive, that demands, that criticizes without rest. Overcoming negative thoughts isn't about winning a war within you. It's about changing the tone you use to talk to yourself when things don't go as you expected. You don't need to be tough to move forward. You can be clear without hurting yourself. You can correct yourself without blaming yourself. You can have discipline without becoming your own enemy. Your mind doesn't need punishment. It needs direction. And that direction begins every time you choose to talk to yourself like someone who deserves respect, even in your most vulnerable moments. Let's start now with a question that many people avoid. How do you treat yourself when you make a mistake? Because sometimes it's not the problem that weighs on you the most, but the way you talk to yourself afterward, that internal voice that gives no quarter, that repeats errors, that demands more of you than you can give. Overcoming what hurts you isn't shouting at yourself to get going. It's learning to build a different relationship with yourself. A relationship where there are demands, yes, but also respect, where you can look at yourself truthfully without humiliating yourself. You don't need to push yourself with anger. You need to guide yourself with clarity. It's not necessary to punish yourself to improve. What is necessary is to understand that real change is born from commitment, not from contempt. That commitment begins when you choose to stop talking to yourself as if you were your own enemy. Every yes you say to please others can be a no to what makes you happy. You lose energy, you lose freedom, you lose life, and most seriously, you lose yourself. Maybe you never calculated it, but you are paying for it with your well-being, with that fatigue that won't go away, with the tension in your body, with that anxiety that appears without warning, because every time you silence what you feel so as not to be a nuisance, your body listens. Every time you say yes when you mean to say no, your health takes note. Louise Hay taught that the body is a faithful reflection of our most constant thoughts. And when those thoughts are born of guilt, fear, or the need for approval, not only is your authenticity extinguished, but your vital energy is also weakened. Every choice to please others at your own expense builds an invisible but real distance between you and your truth, and that disconnection sooner or later takes its toll on your mind, your emotions, and your body. But there is a new choice. When you begin to measure that cost and decide to stop paying it, something changes. You start to prioritize yourself, and that is not selfishness. It is responsibility for your own existence. Living with authenticity is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It is a form of emotional health. It is the decision to stop betraying yourself, to fit in and start taking care of yourself, to live in coherence. Perhaps not everyone will understand it. Perhaps you will even lose some relationships along the way, but you will gain something that no external applause can give you: respect for yourself and peace with your truth. Because when you stop acting to please and begin to live from what you truly feel, you give yourself the greatest gift: coming home to yourself. Let's now move on to something that weighs more than it seems: the expectations that don't let you breathe. I'm not talking about healthy dreams or goals, but about those invisible demands that you carry with you like a silent burden. What others expected of you, what you thought you should have already achieved, what society taught you to pursue without question. Rigid expectations don't inspire you, they imprison you, because the more you cling to how life should be, the more you move away from how it really is. And that distance is what fuels your anxiety, your dissatisfaction, your feeling of failure, even if you are doing your best. It's not about giving up on moving forward. It's about letting go of the idea that everything has to turn out the way you had imagined it. True fulfillment doesn't arrive when everything is fulfilled, but when you learn to live with more flexibility and less pressure. The mind has this habit of creating perfect scripts: a health without setbacks, a relationship where there are never doubts, a professional life that progresses without setbacks, friendships that are always there, dreams that are fulfilled in the exact time you imagined. But life doesn't follow that script. And when it goes off script, when the body gets sick without warning, when someone you loved leaves, when a plan doesn't work even though you gave everything you had, the pain appears not only because of what happened, but because you expected it not to happen. Sometimes it's not reality that hurts. It's the contrast with the story we had told ourselves. A story where there was no place for error, loss, a pause, or an unexpected transformation. And that's where many people break down, not because they lack strength, but because they blame themselves for not having gotten to where they thought they should be. How many times have you expected someone to understand you without you saying a word? For a partner to sense your wounds without you having to name them? For your body to respond as if it never got tired? For the world to accommodate your times, your values, your ways of feeling? How many times have you been frustrated, not because things were unfair, but because they didn't live up to what you had idealized? Waiting without awareness is a direct path to suffering, and many times, more than being disappointed with others, you end up disconnecting from yourself. Because the more rigid the expectation, the more vulnerable your peace becomes. That rigidity not only locks you inside, but also raises invisible walls between you and others. Because when you expect perfection, you stop seeing humanity. You forget that everyone carries their own baggage, that each person has wounds, fears, bad days, and limits that they sometimes cannot explain. And when your peace depends on others always getting it right, always being there, always responding as you expect, that peace becomes fragile, vulnerable, and unstable. No relationship, no dream, no process can be sustained if you subject it to the weight of the ideal. Real life needs space for the imperfect, for the unexpected, for what simply is. True wisdom is not in controlling everything, but in recognizing what part is yours and letting go of the rest. Louise Hay said that when we let go of control, healing begins, because what is held by force becomes tense, and what is accepted with awareness transforms. Peace is not passivity. It is an active choice. It is looking at your actions with honesty and saying, I have done the best I can with what I know and with what I have, and now I trust in life, in the process, and above all in myself. Accepting is not giving up. It is stopping the exhaustion over what doesn't depend on you so that you have real energy for what you can change. Unreal expectations are prisons with invisible walls. You walk, but you don't move forward. You blame yourself for things that were never in your hands, and you repeat the cruel mantra of it should have been different. Eliminate unrealistic expectations. Embrace the real, the imperfect, the possible. Let your presence today sow what only time can make flourish, because in the end, peace is not about having everything under control. It's about knowing that no matter what happens, you are capable of moving forward. Now let's talk about something that seems harmless but can destroy your progress from within: the constant search for shortcuts. We live in a culture that promises you quick results. Change your life in 7 days. Heal your wounds with a formula. Achieve success without effort. But what they don't tell you is the price you pay for avoiding the process. Shortcuts don't just steal time. They steal depth, and with it, character, patience, and true transformation. Avoiding effort doesn't make you more free. It makes you weaker, because everything worthwhile requires something of you: commitment, discomfort, decision, and what you build without roots collapses with the first wind. How many times have you fallen for promises of express change, magical diets, idealized relationships, solutions without emotional work, and what was left in the end? Fatigue, frustration, and a part of you that began to distrust even what is possible. Louise Hay said it clearly: true change doesn't come with a rush. It comes with love and constancy. And if you want to truly grow, you have to choose the path that shapes you, not the one that only entertains you. Believing in shortcuts is one of the most silent forms of self-sabotage. They seem efficient, but they are like revolving doors. You enter full of hope and leave from exactly the same place. Sometimes even more tired, more frustrated. You waste time and get even further away from the person you could have become. Think clearly. How many times have you seen someone try to change their whole life with a quick fix, extreme diets, miracle apps, secret methods? But none of that is sustainable without real effort, without a commitment to daily practice, with the patience of taking it one step at a time. Those who live looking for easy paths not only get fragile results, but also train their minds to give up quickly. A mind that has not learned to sustain effort, that despairs when something takes time, that breaks down at the first difficulty, and difficulties always come. But when you haven't developed internal resistance, any obstacle seems like a wall. Because shortcuts don't teach patience. Shortcuts don't prepare you for real life. They don't teach you to get up, to correct yourself, to persevere with more clarity. Louise Hay said, everything you do with love and repetition transforms your life. But if you only repeat avoidance, that also becomes a habit of self-sabotage. The path that demands the most is not a punishment. It is a silent school. That is where your character is refined, where you learn to wait with confidence, to persist without anger, and to fail without losing yourself. Because it is not just about getting there, it is about becoming someone who can sustain what you so long for, not by chance, not by luck, but because you built it step by step, with intention, with commitment, with truth. That is the kind of success that doesn't collapse. The one that is born from within, the one that doesn't depend on the result, but on who you are choosing to be in the process. Now let's get into something very profound. The anxiety that decides for you when you don't take control of your mind. Anxiety doesn't always scream. Sometimes it appears as chest tension, insomnia, or constant fatigue. Other times it is disguised as urgency, as the need to have everything under control, as the fear of making a mistake. And most subtly, it arrives even before the day begins, for no clear reason, with no logical explanation, but with all the weight. Many times it's not what is happening that distresses you, but what you think could happen. And that's where the wear and tear begins. You live in alert mode, worried about what hasn't happened yet, trying to anticipate pain, disappointments, failures, but in that attempt to control, you lose the only thing that truly belongs to you, the present moment. Louise Hay said, "The power is always in the now." And when you choose to return to your breathing, to what you can do, to what does depend on you, you are reclaiming that power. Anxiety grows when your attention lives in a future that doesn't exist yet, but it dissolves when you train your mind to be present, conscious, and calm. And the most disconcerting thing about anxiety is this: there is no real danger in front of you, but your body reacts as if you were in an emergency. You breathe fast, your chest tightens, your thoughts accelerate, everything tenses up. And why? Out of fear of something that hasn't happened yet, or even worse, of something that may never happen. That's where the invisible circle begins. Your mind creates a catastrophic scenario. Your body believes it, and you enter a state of alarm without knowing how to get out. It is a silent but profound wear and tear. It not only robs you of the present, it conditions you, exhausts you, and paralyzes you. Louise Hay talked about this very clearly. You are not in danger, you are just thinking about danger. And that sustained thought, if not questioned, becomes an emotional prison. So the key is not to eliminate fear, but to stop obeying it blindly. Return to yourself, return to the now, and ask yourself, is this happening, or am I just imagining it? Anxiety is not the problem at its core. The problem is believing everything it tells you without giving yourself the right to verify if it's true. Think of anxiety as driving on a highway full of cars. You can't control the other drivers. No matter how much you worry, if you try, you'll only get stressed out. The only thing that is under your control is how you drive. The control is in how you manage your focus, your speed, your decisions. The same thing happens with life. A large part of anxiety is born from a subtle mistake, putting energy where we have no power. Anxiety grows when you disconnect from your center, when you forget that not everything is under your control, and you wear yourself out trying to dominate what doesn't depend on you. The decisions of others, the exact outcome of every little thing, the future that has not yet arrived. That's where you lose your calm, but that's also where the way out is. Go back to yourself. Go back to what you can touch: your habits, your focus, your way of breathing, your way of interpreting things. Because true security doesn't come from outside. It comes from what you choose to practice every day within you. Louise Hay said that every thought we choose is like a seed, and if you want to harvest peace, you can't keep sowing fear. So where is your attention? Are you letting it drift, or are you directing it like the valuable resource it is? What you feed with your focus grows, and if you decide to nourish what does depend on you, fear begins to lose strength because it no longer has as much space to settle in. Now imagine anxiety as a tree. You can cut some branches when the symptoms appear, breathe deeply, try to distract yourself, but if the root is sick, the tree will remain weak. The root of anxiety is fear. Fear of the unpredictable, fear of judgment, fear of pain that may never come. And only those who have the courage to look at that root can transform its fruits. Calming anxiety is not about turning off the symptoms, but about nourishing the right roots: awareness, presence, acceptance. When fear appears, ask yourself, am I reacting to the present or to a future that only exists in my head? That simple question can bring you back to the present, the only place where life really happens. So perhaps today is the time to let go of that impulse to want to anticipate everything, as if controlling the future were a guarantee of tranquility. Let go of the need to have all the answers, as if not making a mistake were more important than moving forward. Let go of that subtle but persistent fear of not being in control, when in reality you never had it completely. Louise Hay said that to trust is to surrender to life as if you were being held by an invisible net. And it's true, it's not about giving up, it's about releasing weight, because living is not about having control of everything. Living is learning to trust in yourself, to respond with clarity when the time comes. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to be present, connected with yourself. And then what was once anxiety begins to transform into confidence. Now let's talk about something that many people don't dare to look at. What happens when you leave yourself at the end of your own list? Always putting yourself second is not only exhausting, it's a slow way of disconnecting from yourself. You let the world completely occupy you, and when you finally have a moment left, you no longer know what you need, what hurts you, or what is good for you. At first it seems like generosity. You say yes, you support, you solve, you are there for everyone, but in silence you are abandoning yourself. And the most painful thing is that no one notices because you do it so well that you don't even seem to need yourself. Louise Hay taught that the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself, and that every act of self-care is a declaration of self-love. It's not about selfishness, it's about remembering that you also matter, that your body needs rest, that your mind needs calm, that your soul needs direction. So look at it honestly. How many times do you postpone what is good for you? How many promises do you keep for everyone but yourself? Life is not going to give you that space if you don't claim it, and doing so is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of maturity. Today is a good day to go back to yourself, to choose yourself, not when you have time to spare, but when you need it most. At first, it just seems like generosity. You help, you say yes, you solve, you care for others, but over time it becomes a disguised renunciation. You eliminate yourself in small doses until you no longer realize that you are absent from your own life. When you get used to not being there, to not choosing yourself, to not listening to yourself, something inside you begins to turn off, and at first you don't notice it. You only feel a slight tiredness, a slight confusion, a disconnection that you don't know where it comes from, but over time you realize it. You are living for everyone except for yourself. You no longer know if what you do is what you want or what is expected of you. You don't know if what you're not saying is prudence or fear. You don't know if what you feel is sadness or emptiness. And that loss of clarity is not a coincidence. It is the result of years of postponing yourself, because those who postpone themselves in the everyday lose themselves in the essential. You disconnect from your intuition, from your desire, from your purpose. You move away from your essence. Louise Hay said, "When you really love yourself, everything in your life begins to work." But that's not magic, it's a decision. A decision that you also matter, that your well-being is non-negotiable, that your presence in your own life is urgent. You are not here to survive someone else's schedule. You are here to build a life that also contains you, where you are also a priority, where you don't forget yourself so that others can remember you, where you don't betray yourself so that others can accept you. Getting yourself back is an act of love, and that love begins when you finally make yourself present. Reclaiming your place is not a noisy declaration, it is a silent act of reconnection. It means recognizing yourself as someone who also matters, not only when there is spare time, not only when everything else is resolved. It is beginning to treat your energy as something valuable. It is no longer postponing the spaces where you can listen to yourself, rest and breathe without a rush. It is stopping living according to what is urgent and starting to respond to what is important. Putting yourself first is not a whim. It is health, emotional, mental, even physical health. Because the body also wears out when the soul lives in abandonment, and the mind becomes clouded when its own needs are ignored. When you choose yourself, you are not being selfish. You are restoring an internal order. You are remembering that you can only offer the best of yourself when you are in yourself, and that respect for others begins with respect for your own well-being. Going back to yourself is going back home, and that home needs care, attention, and presence, without guilt, without excuses, just a decision. How do you feel after everything we shared today? Do you think this video can help you live with more energy, with more clarity, with more peace? I invite you to write it in the comments. Tell us how you feel now and how you are going to start looking at life from today on. This channel is a space for that. Here there is no judgment. Here there are many of us walking toward the same thing, to learn, to heal, to improve, to return to ourselves. Thank you for being here, for giving yourself this time, for choosing this content amidst everything the world offers. If you felt that this video truly spoke to you, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with whomever you think needs it. Maybe for someone, this isn't just a video, but the beginning of a profound change. From within your mind, you have the power to change everything. I send you a big hug.